Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Waldman. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How are you? It is July 14th, Thursday, July 14th, 2016. If you're at Netroots Nation, screw you, you bastard. I hope you're having a great time. Oh, I'm not. This is the third year in a row, by the way, that I have both missed Netroots Nation and missed the cut at the U.S. Open. Both times, both things, both fates befell me for 3 years in a row. It's true. I don't know if you've been watching, but keeping track of such things. If you're lucky enough to have made the cut at the U.S. Open, congratulations to you. If you are lucky enough to be at Netroots Nation, now that's something serious. That's great news. Hey, I saw a picture last night of Bill in Portland, Maine. And who was it that tweeted it? I didn't put it aside. I'll find it in a second. Give me a few minutes here to get things started and get things rolling. When Greg comes, I'll roll back and make sure I give proper credit. Was it Christina? Yes. Well, okay, I think. All right. Anyway, I'll just roll back and we'll find it. Maybe you're listening. You're jumping up and down. Maybe you're not. Maybe you're doing the Aaron Burr thing with the peanut butter in your mouth. Aaron Burr stock way down since Hamilton, huh? Anyway, too bad for him. The topic of the day so far this morning has not been our Netroots Nation convention, so talk it up. It's a little bit early, I think, of course, Central Time Zone, so 8 in the morning there. If you're up, fantastic. More power to you. Maybe you're one of those early riser types. I'm typically not. This show probably wouldn't start until, I don't know, the afternoon at some point, I guess, if it was up to me entirely. Or, I guess it is kind of up to me, sort of. Of course, we have a schedule to keep up, and I asked for this schedule because if I started in the afternoon, I wouldn't get anything done ever. So, morning is a pretty good time. It's 8 a.m. in St. Louis, where Netroots Nation will be kicking off. Probably a bunch of you who were there already on the ground have been out on the town already. Say last night, that's typically, if it's been years now, people have been arriving on Wednesdays just to get the festivities started. And why not? It's one of the best parts of it. It's hard to wait for for things to get started officially, and you might as well kick things off. Pardon me as I have a frog in my throat. It's day 4 of camp, and so we're still on the 7-Eleven coffee plan. I'm getting a feel for which 7-Elevens around town are doing the best job putting on the coffee presentation. I've hit the corner bakery of 7-Elevens recently. Our most recently opened 7-Eleven seems to have a difficulty keeping the regular coffee just flowing. But that's neither here nor there. That is here. But let's talk about there. Netroots Nation, as I said, underway. Other chatter this morning. The Republican National Convention, those losers, are getting together in their own gathering, I guess, next week, and the schedule is beginning to come together. Guess who's not going to be there? Most of the really big name celebrities, and even then they weren't really huge name celebrities, but they were sports figures, and that counts for the Trump crowd. Trump, a couple weeks ago, and as recently as last week, was insisting Bobby Knight, famous basketball coach, was going to be there. Jack Nicklaus, famous golfer, in case you're not paying any attention at all to the last 50 years or so. He's not going to be there. I only heard about Bobby Knight, actually. Definitely not doing it today. Jack Nicklaus put out a statement through his agent, I guess, the other day that no way, that was never happening. No one ever talked to me about it. I don't know the guy, and I'm definitely not going to anybody's political convention. So that was pretty damn definitive. Now Bobby Knight is out. However, Tim Tebow will be there. I suggest he'll be there, of course, to offer the requisite thoughts and prayers for anybody who gets shot during the convention. I was asked, presumably by a Trump fan, I didn't bother answering, on Twitter, why would anybody get shot during the convention? Of course, for clarity's sake, I should say, as I did, during the convention, not at the convention or inside the convention, though I suppose that's possible too. One of the reasons it's always possible is, hell, anybody can get, I guess the real answer, why would anybody get shot even during the convention? By accident. Entirely by accident. It wouldn't matter whether there was an incident of any kind, just plain old by accident, because as you know, plenty of people get shot by accident every day. 80 people get shot by accident every day, I think, was the number I once calculated, thanks to the CDC numbers. Anyway, or 80 people shot in total, and about 40 of them by accident. I can't remember. Anyway, you and I both know a lot of people get shot by accident all the time, and that happens where the guns go. And guess where the guns are going? They're not going inside the Republican National Convention. The Secret Service says nothing doing on that score. Not to mention, I don't know what the private, the arena in which they'll be holding the convention has to say about guns. Not that gun enthusiasts care much about guns being prohibited anywhere. They all think that's entirely unconstitutional anyway. Plus YOLO, so you bring your guns. And I could fill up the whole 2 hours with stories of people who did exactly that, if you doubt me. With links, but you don't. Instead, though, I will note that I believe the Cleveland Police Department, Ohio is an open carry state, and with the Republicans in town, in state, for the convention, it's difficult for them to reconcile right-wing cheerleading for open carry rules and hooray for guns with the need for security around the Republican National Convention, which, okay, that makes things tough. I say resolve the issue on the side of the guns, at least with respect to their convention. People get shot, they get shot. I mean, it'll be terrible for the people who get shot, but we'll do what we can to try to keep the numbers down. Anyway, the policy, apparently, and let me dig this one up here. Sponson, our Twitter pal, who's always following along, I think sometimes live with the show, made note yesterday that the policy of the police department, the Cleveland chief of police, in fact, this according to NBC News, here it is, let's bring it up. Let's hope there's no auto-playing video. Police will abide by Ohio's open carry laws at the GOP convention. Not inside, but outside. But guess what that means? Here's a weird twist for you. Of course, they're honoring the text of the Second Amendment, which says that the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. But of course, what they're really honoring here is the open carry gun laws. So what does that mean? It means guns, and only guns. It means that you can carry a gun openly outside of the convention perimeter, I guess, but not a knife. A knife would be beyond the pale because cult of the gun, obviously. We'll talk a little bit about that and a little bit about other things too. But I think I may end up getting back to the gun issue, because I've got a couple of things that I think make for interesting historical background, which we might as well review before the Republicans get together and threaten to destroy the Constitution and the United States of America one more time. That is, we'll review it one more time before they threaten to destroy it one more time. Wow. Okay. So let's see other tidbits that are flying around the Twitter sphere, because that's where I get all my news. Apparently, Newt Gingrich took a private jet flight. Again, somebody actually offered him a private jet flight to go and meet with Trump, probably with regard to the vice presidential vetting process. And Sean Hannity interviewed him about it and defended the private jet flight. And that's probably because it was Sean Hannity's jet that was used to fly Newt to his meeting. And that probably because no charter company will extend him credit anymore. I don't know, unless, I still do think that there's a distinct possibility that Moby Dick Airways is just a front that exists for the purpose of sinking money into flying prominent Republicans, most specifically Newt Gingrich, around the country. So it may be that they don't care that they're still owed several $1 million for his charter air flight. I don't think there's anything wrong with, like, in the legal sense, wrong with Sean Hannity using his, I think it's terrible that Sean Hannity makes enough money to have a private jet, given what he does, but he does. And lending it to Newt Gingrich doesn't raise any political or, raises political issues, I guess, because he's supposed to be one of those impartial journalists, but nobody believes he is. And that's okay, too, because we know that there's opinion journalism out there. Maybe he should be keeping arm's length from people who might be on the ticket or in the race for VP and lending them the jet, but, I don't care. Is it a in-kind contribution? Not yet, because he's not running for vice president, so I don't see a great problem on that front, except for just appearances. But optics, of course, are central to everything a Democrat does. Blah, 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 whatever, you losers, when it comes to Republicans. You know how that goes. Anyway, let's see. Here comes Greg Dworkin. Thoughts and prayers to you, Greg. Just
why
because.
Did something happen?
No, just in case. As I
something
think
I should know about.
Have it in reserve.
In case something happens later today.
Yes, or if someone threatens you, you can pull them out and see if it helps any, like body armor.
Okay, we could do that.
Yeah.
So, interestingly, today, I'm doing the Pundit Roundup all week. George is on vacation, so she usually does Tuesdays, Fridays. I'm filling in, so that means I got Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, which is today, Friday, and Saturday. So I got a lot of material to fill, and I decided, you know what, we're going to look a little bit about policy today, not just politics, although there's plenty to talk about in regard to politics. Yeah, we got the Republican National Convention coming up, and they're putting out the lineups, and it's hard to recognize everybody who's speaking, and I think their focus on policy is going to be on Bill Clinton from the 90s.
Well,
I think they're devoting a whole night to it.
That's true. Okay. Boy, did he have policies.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because who are they going to have talking about family values? I guess Pam Bondi, the Florida, what is she, Attorney General, who took...
well, she holds that title, yes.
Basically took a bribe from Trump to drop the Trump University stuff.
Yeah, and an illegal one at that. Had there been no quid pro quo, it still would have been illegal. It was a foundation. They're not supposed to make those donations. She has yet to return that, I believe.
Right, so we'll see. Also interesting in the news, it broke last night, and AP has something about this. Trump seeks $10 million in damages from former campaign aide. Did you see that story?
I did. I think, Trump seeks $10 million is not much of a headline. He's always seeking $10 million.
Right, but it turns out it's right in the middle of the campaign.
Yes.
And the person he's suing is Sam Nunberg. For violating the same non-disclosure agreement that binds Corey Lewandowski to actually never say anything bad about Trump. And that is what it says.
Yeah.
Because in court, Nunberg has to release, what that NDA is. Yeah. So now you have Lewandowski, not only mentioned because he's got one and he works for CNN and that's incredibly stupid, but actually Corey Lewandowski is in the middle of this suit.
He is. Well, he's not. He was in the middle of his suit, and then he got out of it.
Yeah, so now it's an empty suit.
Right.
So what happens is, in the court filings, Nunberg denied disparaging Trump and accused the presumptive GOP nominee of attempting to bully him into silence after Nunberg decided to publicly support Ted Cruz. And Nunberg is the guy accused of making racist quotes, remember? That's part of the reason.
I don't remember. And I just assumed that anybody who was there made racist quotes.
Well, in fact, that did happen.
Okay. Thank you.
But anyway. Now, here we go. It all happened because apparently Nunberg said something which was nasty, or perceived to be nasty, about the campaign because he was talking about a yelling match between Hope Hicks, who's Trump's national spokesperson, and Corey Lewandowski, who is or was the campaign manager. So he still is Trump's former campaign manager. In the court filings, Nunberg said Trump filed a $10 million arbitration claim against him and falsely accused him of being a source of a New York Post story from mid-May that recounted a public quarrel between Lewandowski and campaign spokeswoman Hope Hicks.
Oh.
Lewandowski was fired from the campaign in June after months of tension with other senior Trump advisors. Nunberg denied being the source of the article, but in court papers referred to the quarrel as being part of an apparent affair.
Yes. That's the part about taking the suit off.
Yeah. So that's why it was an empty suit. It's always been an empty suit. But
yes,
it was
true.
It was an even more empty suit.
Right.
Garten told the AP that Nunberg's allegations about Hicks and Lewandowski are categorically untrue. Reached by phone, Lewandowski said he was not familiar with the court case and would not comment on Nunberg's allegations.
Can't. It's got an NDA. Which reminds me, there are two agreements floating out there. Are they suing over the non-disparagement agreement or the non-disclosure agreement?
I don't know.
I don't know either. It doesn't matter much.
But probably the non-disparagement one, I would think. But
nothing wrong with the...
You know, I don't know. I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah. Rebecca tells us that Lewandowski is still being paid by the Trump campaign, which is a little unusual.
Severance. He's getting severance.
Yeah.
Not quite the same thing as getting paid, but if he wants his money, he'll keep his mouth shut.
Right. And also, yeah, well, that's true. Never... I don't know. I'm not even sure now what to think about it. Never say. Certainly don't want to say anything while you still have that hanging over your head if you want your money. But it's a pretty good chance if Donald Trump owes you the money, you're not going to get it anyway.
Right.
So there is that.
Yeah. So let's run down the polls today because there's a whole ton of them. This morning is the CBS New York Times poll, which actually has Trump and Clinton tied 40-40. It was down 3 for Clinton and up 3 for Trump. And a whole bunch of polls yesterday, not just the Quinnipiac polls, which everybody always goes nuts about. But we have these. We have Marist in Iowa, Clinton 42, Trump 39. In Ohio, tied. Pennsylvania, Clinton 45, Trump 36, in contradistinction to the Q poll that actually had Trump ahead by a couple of points. The MU Law poll, highly respected for Wisconsin, 43-37 for Clinton. And also 3 Colorado polls, all released in the last 24 hours, and Clinton up +7, +10, and +13.
3 Colorado. Okay, I mean, we should spread this out a little, guys.
All right, and then Virginia from Fox, Clinton 44, Trump 37.
Okay.
All of those actually sound pretty good.
Yeah.
The only ones that sound bad are the Q polls, and Q polls always sound bad for Clinton. Right. The CBS New York Times poll being tied is, of course, being touted by CBS as an example of how she's doomed. And it's an interesting pre-convention discussion. Actually, the discussion really ought to be a whole lot more about some of the things involved with Trump and Trump speakers. But we'll get to that. Fantastic ad out today from the Clinton camp.
Okay.
And what it is a bunch of children looking at the TV, listening to Trump talk. Listening to Trump talk about immigration, about making fun of the New York Times reporter and people with disability, about, and each one is a young, innocent 5-6-year-old face, 4-year-old face, looking at the screen, and then the cap line is, this is what our children are listening to. It's actually very effective. So that'll be out. And of course, we still haven't, it's way too early to get a sense of what it means in terms of the Bernie Sanders endorsement. And, of course, we have the convention starting next week. So in about 10 days, it'll be a much better situation in terms of really figuring out what's going on. Greg Sargent has a nice piece here. Top Dems think Clinton took a hit, talking about the FBI Comey stuff and emails, but they aren't particularly nervous.
Okay.
Which is very odd because Democrats are always nervous.
Yes, that makes me nervous.
Yeah, it makes me nervous that they're not nervous. But actually, it's the no drama Obama team, Robbie Mook and such, and I don't think they are nervous. I think they are quietly confident, and I think that's the right place to be. Nobody should take this for granted. It's going to be a tight race. Ohio really is tied, and Florida's probably pretty close. Clinton probably has a lead there, despite what Quinnipiac says. But it's going to be tight. It's just that she's likely to pick up a whole lot of the swing states, as we were talking about with the polls I just told you about. Yeah. Even though they're tight. So I think she wins, and I think that the question on the table is this going to look more like 2008 or 2012? Is it going to be a larger win like with McCain or a smaller win like with Romney. I think it's going to be a win nonetheless. And I think this is probably just about the low point for the Clinton campaign, which I believe that she has weathered. But there's no question that the polls have tightened a little bit, just not that much. If you look at the Real Clear Politics averages, and I'm using them because they're a little bit quicker about updating, and the CBS poll just came out this morning. But I will send that along. And actually, looks about the way it always looks.
Okay. Well, that's what happens with averages.
Yeah.
And speaking of averages, the odds of Mike Pence appear to be way up for some reason.
Yeah, because they released the speakers, and Newt Gingrich is listed as speaking, and the vice presidential nominee is listed as speaking later that night.
Yes, which is it's entirely possible.
And of course, they don't name it, so
right.
But it looks like Pence
or her or the dog, possibly.
Or his daughter, or we're not sure.
Right. She's listed too, so
maybe it'll be a real big surprise, and for the purposes of unity, it'll be Chelsea Clinton.
Oh, that's an idea.
Well,
boy,
we have no idea. The rumors are, and it's really interesting if in fact this comes to be, if it is Pence, the rumors floating around are that Trump really wanted somebody like Chris Christie because he got along with him and felt like he was a kindred soul.
And he got his McDonald's.
And the family business,
yes,
wanted Pence.
Really?
Yeah.
That's the kids.
Yeah. His kids are a whole lot smarter than Dad.
Ivanka appears to be. I'm not convinced that Eric and Donald have anything on the big Donald.
No. It's all Ivanka.
Yeah. And he knows it, and he's right about that. Trump's
and
not
right
wrong.
About
That's
it. She's pretty smart compared to him.
He's not wrong about that. They do the vetting for him. They were the ones that got rid of Lewandowski.
Right. So it'll be very interesting. And, it's just going to play into the anti-LGBT, Trump hates everything theme. I'm sure that's how it's going to be played by the Democrats, given what happened in Indiana and the bizarre anti-LGBT laws that Pence tried to pass. And, of course, they really don't like him in Indiana.
Pence?
We talked about that, Pence. We talked about that the other day in terms of Indiana polling.
Huh.
Pence is probably not going to be reelected. So he, by the way, had to know by tomorrow because, you got to file for reelection.
Oh, really?
And you can't, in Indiana, you can't run for governor and for national office at the same time. So it had to be one or the other. So Pence was actually giving the Trump campaign ultimatums. You got to tell me by Friday. I got to know.
That works great. Try giving Trump ultimatums.
That was one of the reasons why, people thought that wasn't going to go so well. But probably he gave it to the kids, not to Trump.
Maybe. Yeah.
Anyway, it sounds like Pence. And again, what does Pence bring? He's a solid conservative that will reassure other conservatives who might have been on the fence, helping Trump to get the 90% of Republicans that are going to vote for their own candidate, no matter who it is. And at the same time, he will not steal the camera from Trump, and that might make Trump a little more comfortable. The other interesting thing is when Trump told the media, I really need an attack dog. Which is when he was thinking about Christie, and then the next day saying, I really don't need an attack dog.
Okay. Yeah.
Which is probably after his daughter got to him and knocked some sense into his head.
And he doesn't. I mean, how boring would it be?
Well, the idea was somebody else could do it so I could be presidential.
And
then he's, I do it better than anybody else.
Right. I mean, there's no sense in not letting Trump be Trump at this point. But,
and that may be the persuasive thing for him.
Yeah.
I know what you wanted, but you have to be yourself, because you were so great. So just pick Pence and let yourself be great. Oh, yeah, okay, I'll go along with that.
It would be an amazing alternate reality experiment, though, to see if he were able to pull something like that off, get somebody else to be the attack dog and try to be presidential, and succeed insofar as that means not saying terrible, terrible, outrageous things. It would be amazing to watch, I think, the traditional media folks say, man, is he presidential seeming after having watched him for a year be the most outrageous lunatic ever to run for anything, much less president of the United States, and documenting it very well.
Speaking of that, documenting it very well, we have a couple of pieces here. Here's why Donald Trump is horrifying, according to historians. This is from the Huffington Post, Sam Levine piece. History tells us we shouldn't underestimate him. Historians including David McCullough, Ken Burns, Robert Caro, Rob Chernow, and Vicky Lynn Ruiz have all posted short videos explaining why Trump's campaign is disturbing to a Facebook page called Historians on Donald Trump. And, of course, Ken Burns organized it.
Oh.
McCullough, who received the Pulitzer Prize for books on presidents like John Adams and Harry Truman. I'm reading the Adams one now.
How about that Adams Family?
I'd rather read the Adams Family. I have to tell you, I'm reading the Adams. It's a really good book, but I'm forcing myself to get through it. It's not one of those barn burners. You sit down and just,
I only read books that are forced issues for me. I don't know why.
But, I like to learn about this
But I read
stuff.
that one. It's good.
Anyway, so there's that. And then Josh Marshall has one on a propagator of race, hatred, and violence. Just reminders.
Oh, thank you.
He says, this isn't getting a lot of attention, but it should. Everybody took note when Donald Trump repeatedly claimed the American Muslims across the river in New Jersey celebrated and cheered as the Twin Towers fell on 9/11, an entirely fabricated claim. Last night in Bill O'Reilly's show, and then separately in a rally in Westfield, Indiana. He did something similar, and in doing so cemented his status as an impulsive propagator of race, hatred, and violence. He claimed that some people, called for a moment of silence for mass killer Micah Johnson, the now deceased mass shooter who killed 5 police officers in Dallas on Thursday night.
Yes.
There is no evidence this ever happened.
No, and I believe he took it a little bit further, and he got caught up in his own hyperbole, and later appeared to be saying that the marches, the Black Lives Matter marches, were in fact marches for the shooter, and not
You
just...
got that right, and I have that actual language. The language is important. When somebody called for a moment of silence to this maniac that shot the 5 police, you just see what's going on. It's a very sad situation. And then later at that same rally, the other night you had 11 cities potentially in a blow-up stage, marches all over the United States, and tough marches, anger, hatred, started by a maniac, and some people asked for a moment of silence for him, for the killer.
Yeah.
Completely distorting what was going on.
Yeah. I can't wait for him eventually, of natural causes, to be gone.
Right. At the risk of invoking Godwin's law, if you translate the German, the febrile and agitated language of hatred, anger, and maniac is the kind of florid and incendiary language Adolf Hitler used in many of his speeches. Note, too, the actual progression of what Trump said. Marches all over the U.S., tough marches, anger, hatred, started by a maniac, emphasis added. The clear import of this fusillade of words is the country's awash in militant protests that were inspired by Micah Johnson.
Yeah. So true.
And it's not simply false, it's a kind of wild racist indictment that puts whole societies in danger, and this man wants to be president.
Yeah. I don't believe David Duke even said that.
No, not yet, but he will.
He'll try.
All right, let's see what else we got here. We have some analysis of the Q polls, some from Nate Silver, who likes them, some from Steve Shale from Florida, who doesn't. I don't think there's anything new there. Here's some interesting stuff. Again, we were talking about policy, and for the few minutes I have left, I did want to talk a little bit about that. A lot about healthcare. There's a really good piece by Dan Diamond from the Pundit Roundup today about whether or not Obamacare is good for jobs and it's good for the economy. It certainly, during the recession, was partially created to make sure that jobs were not taken away. But now that there's no recession anymore, we're adding lots of healthcare jobs, and the question is going to be, can we afford it down the road? So is it good policy or is it not good policy?
Okay.
And Margaret Sanger-Katz also had a piece, even though it's a National Journal behind a paywall. I found a PDF of it thanks to her, so I posted that so everybody could read it. Healthcare, great for the economy today, terrible later. She wrote it 3 years ago. And turns out to be the same thing that Dan Diamond was talking about, and I think actually pretty good stuff.
Okay.
And it just points out healthcare thrived when the economy sank, and that was partially by design.
Okay.
Right? And to give you a bigger picture, there's stuff happening in Connecticut. This is from the Connecticut Mirror yesterday. After spending 6 months studying new ways to control ever-growing healthcare costs, a state-hired consulting firm presented a plan to Connecticut's healthcare cabinet Tuesday that calls for the largest reorganization and consolidation of health-related state agencies in 2 decades. The proposal urges the creation of a new super agency of sorts, the Connecticut Health Authority. Sounds like the Port Authority, right?
It doesn't sound that super, but okay.
That would absorb the responsibilities of more than a half a dozen existing state agencies and would create a quasi-independent oversight agency, the Office of Health Reform. with broad powers to track and limit healthcare cost increases in the state. Further, the plan calls for incentives to increase networking between providers of healthcare services from small-town docs to the state's largest hospitals. That would allow the state to implement value-based payments to the Medicaid program and state employee benefits program instead of existing fee-for-service. This means healthcare providers would be paid on the quality of care they provide rather than flat rates for service. So if you, for example, take care of asthma the way I do, it would mean that what you're supposed to do is make sure that you're partnered, which we already are, with Connecticut Children's and Yale, the two big children's hospitals in the state, and that you'd be paid for how well do you keep your kids out of the hospital rather than every time I see them I get a fee. Which is pretty much what we do now anyway. We're ahead of the curve. I'm comfortable with that. But and this doesn't mean it's going to pass. There's going to be a lot of resistance to it. But it's just interesting that it's an example at state level of what's going on in terms of looking at those healthcare costs and really trying to tackle them. So the idea that, okay, nobody's doing anything is just flat out wrong.
Yes, just nobody is...
Right now we're in the middle of a presidential campaign and we're talking about Trump and Hitler. But the fact is that as far as healthcare goes, there's a whole bunch of other stuff going on here too.
Well,
and here's another one, and this is
Hitler,
from Politico. This is called Obamacare Sinking Safety Net. And it talks about the fact that in places like North Carolina, a ton of people are getting care, but the insurance companies are taking a hit. And why are they taking a hit? There's a couple of different reasons for it. Some of it is by design. They're insuring more people. As it turns out, some of the people are pretty sick. And the other thing is that, led by Marco Rubio, Congress wanted to cut back on risk corridor payments. That is to say that if you took people sicker than you thought, then the government would help to subsidize that to the insurance companies. And some of those payments were canceled because Republicans were trying to sabotage Affordable Care Act. That's not the only reason this is happening. And the truth of the matter is that when you get down to the end of the article, even though insurance companies are taking a hit on a lot of this stuff, to a certain extent, because they're making so much money from Medicare, they can afford to take the hit. So this is all basically a situation where if you have a situation where you decided to stay with a private insurance and build it into the system the way Obamacare did, instead of going to Medicare for all or for single payer of some kind. These are the kinds of results that are almost inevitable. They're to be managed. It's not doomed for the system, although you'll see conservatives play it that way. But clearly, none of it's going to get addressed until after the election.
All right. Well, that's, things like that are largely in a holding pattern, I guess.
Right. And then finally, here's one from Reed Abelson and Margot Sanger-Katz now from the New York Times. Obama on Obamacare's flaws, an assessment, basically looking at the same thing. So healthcare is very much an issue. It may not be a election issue. It's not clear whether it will be or won't be. But if it turns out later on in the campaign it actually comes up, these are the issues that are making it come up. It isn't just, I'm going to repeal Obamacare again. That's stupid. It's really, okay, it's here. There are some weaknesses that need to be fixed. What are you going to do about it? And that's, to a certain extent, why Obama wrote this recent article that Joan covered in the Journal of the American Medical Association looking about that. Because there are some weaknesses and you do need to address them.
I would.
But, that's what happens when you talk to a grown-up. In the meantime, we're looking at the whole...
This, despite the fact that it requires a grown-up, I would still do it.
Here's one from The Atlantic, a completely different problem that absolutely positively needs paying attention to. Measles outbreaks are a sign of bigger problems. For health agencies tracking global vaccine coverage, the disease is a canary in the coal mine. And actually, we have a pretty big measles outbreak in the U.S. right now.
Yes.
And it happened, there was a undocumented person who came in with measles, and the people at the center who were government employees had refused to get vaccinated.
That's unwise.
Well, it turns out it's unwise if you want to not get measles.
Well,
and so that's part of the reason why that's happening. But again, a reminder, measles is considered an integral part of the global health agenda for precisely the reason its contagious nature makes it a good proxy for assessing immunization levels for all vaccine-preventable diseases. So measles is a lot more contagious than many other illnesses, And if you can contain measles, then your overall vaccination program is probably doing pretty good. And if you can't, see Disney World, you need to do work. And that's why California changed some of their practices in regard to exemptions for parents.
I read that there was a mumps outbreak somewhere.
Well,
recently.
but you won't see mumps explode all over the country the way you will measles.
No mump explodes. Okay.
Not quite as contagious.
I just throw it in there because that's the like the 1950s version of that's the package of kids' diseases. Measles, mumps.
Yeah, measles, mumps, and German measles,
right.
Which is relatively mild for kids, not so much if you're pregnant.
Trump's favorite kind of measles, by the way.
Right. Anyway, completely different policy discussion because we promised to talk a little bit about policy for a change, just for a break. This is interesting. This is a Rice University person.
Rice, Texas. Okay.
So when I say rice expert, I don't mean brown rice versus white rice.
Oh, yes.
Rice expert, Trump support due partly to job losses from robotics.
Robotics.
Yeah, he could talk all he wants about manufacturers being sucked down to Mexico. Oh, sorry, that's Ross Perot. He could talk all he wants about how we're losing manufacturing jobs to other countries, but the fact is we're losing manufacturing jobs to automation. Job losses due to automation and robotics are often overlooked in discussions about the unexpected rise of outside political candidates like Trump and Sanders, said Moshe Vardi. Rice's Karen Ostrom George, Distinguished Service Professor of Computational Engineering and Director of Rice's Ken Kennedy Institute for Information Technology.
Well, that's all the time we have.
They're named for people who are donors. That's why everything in the world has names in them. You won't know who they are. It doesn't matter. They gave $1 gazillion to have a building named after them.
Right.
That's what that is. Manufacturing output in the U.S. today is at an all-time high, despite the fact that manufacturing employment has fallen for more than 30 years and is currently around 1948 levels. U.S. factories are not disappearing. They're just not employing humans.
Oh, that's
just
an interesting way of putting it. Yeah. Well,
what if the robots go on strike? What if they form a union?
What if they take over? What if they come for our medications?
I've seen that movie.
Yeah. Well, we do eventually win. Just requires a little bit of time travel.
You take the green pill or the blue
that
pill?
one, yeah. Oh, okay. I was thinking
the red
Terminator.
pill or the blue pill.
Right.
The Matrix, right?
I was thinking Terminator. Get in shape because you can't wear clothes when you time travel.
While manufacturing is the most striking example, there's considerable evidence that automation is transforming other sectors of the labor market, like policing. Now you just send in robots to blow up people.
That's true. Job losses.
Job losses for the unions. Now we get the chance to talk about using robots to kill people. It isn't that it's immoral. It isn't that it's a slippery slope. It's about jobs.
I guess. But, yeah, I don't know. That's a job a lot of people would be willing to give up.
Well, but if you're talking about jobs, anyway. I don't know.
Right, well,
and there's increasing evidence this leads to economic stratification, the decline of the middle class, subsequent undercurrent of misery that is driving support for Trump. As evidence, a number of polls of recent studies, including May Associated Press poll, found that 2/3 of U.S. households would struggle to raise $1,000 to cover an unexpected expense.
I've heard these.
2015 Princeton study found an unexpected marked increase of suicide and substance abuse among middle-aged U.S. whites since 1999, especially if you had less than a high school education.
Yeah.
Right? And a Washington Post analysis of Super Tuesday voting patterns that found, I don't know which Super Tuesday, it was like 9 of them this year, that found that Trump campaign performed particularly well in working class voting districts where white death rates were rising and where median incomes, overall employment, and manufacturing jobs had all declined since 1999.
Wow.
Vardy said more attention should be given to the economic, social, and political consequences of substituting machines for human workers, and he's organizing an academic conference in December for this year. Just so you know.
Right. Well, that is a rather comprehensive view of things. I was at first I was sort of laughing the whole thing off, but you're earning your foundation money down there at Rice. That's a wide net.
Well, I just thought that was more interesting than most academic announcements, so thought we'd highlight that one.
And it is possible to reverse the trend of taking jobs back from robots. Witnessing, like Mitt Romney. Last time the nominee of the Republican Party, now replaced by Donald Trump. So there you have it.
Right. Want a long read to think about the state of the country? Ta-Nehisi Coates gives us one. The near certainty of anti-police violence. By ignoring illegitimate policing, America has also failed to address the danger this illegitimacy poses to those who must actually do the policing. So very good. And just going through here, some of the stuff that we had on the Pundit Roundup today is stuff we already covered on the show. This is an interesting one, which in retrospect is going to be not so interesting. And that is the piece that Matt Katz had. Matt is a Christie expert. Okay. And Matt Katz did a point-counterpoint on why you should pick Christie and why you shouldn't.
Why Trump should pick. Okay.
Yeah, why Trump should and why you shouldn't. And I'm going to skip the part about why he should. Well, maybe not, because I think it's interesting. And it says as much about Trump as Christie. Why Trump should pick Christie? Loyalty, dog whistling, establishment connections, working man's cred, energy, bipartisan reputation, now in tatters, and brilliant political tactician, arguable. Why you shouldn't pick Christie? Bridgegate, David Sampson, missing emails, missing texts, fat jokes and all that sort of stuff. New Jersey doesn't like Christie, and New Jersey is in political paralysis.
Yeah.
So Matt's always given Christie a lot more credence than I ever have. Every time Matt writes one of these, I always tweet him a picture of a piece of toast.
Well, yeah, I mean, stale toast, but it's hanging around, I must say. Yeah, I like the the polite way of putting things and the reasons why not to pick him. He's terrible. He's an idiot, a criminal, and his state hates him.
Right. Plus his weight.
Right. Oh, well, right.
Which is not fat shaming. It's simply recognizing that people may not vote for somebody who looks like him.
It's out there. That's true. And I mean, I don't believe any candidate has ever done more to facilitate and make room for that kind of, for legitimizing, I guess, that sort of commentary than Trump. I mean, he's done that himself. I'm amazed that he hasn't said something.
If Christie had been running higher in the polls, he would have.
I guess that's probably true. Yeah, I mean, he had plenty to say about things just like that. I don't know how he restrained himself on that, except that I guess the guy was sinking into polls, and he thought possibly I might scoop him up for VP. So,
right. Last piece for today, an interesting piece from Pew, which is about religion. And actually, the link is broken here, so I'm going to have to go look it up, and I'll fix that link later. But it's looking at religion and votes. And
that link is broken.
It's interesting in the sense that Trump is doing quite well with evangelicals.
But another broken link?
Yeah, but here we go. We fixed this. Here's the Pew. Here's the story about the poll, and here's the actual poll. Religion in the 2016 campaign. So, large advantage for Trump among white evangelical Protestant voters. But Clinton is doing quite well among Hispanic Catholics. And because of that, compared to June 2012, where Obama was leading Romney with Catholics 49-47, so a D plus 2, if you will. Clinton has a D plus 17.
Oh.
With Catholics.
Well, good.
The white Catholic vote, slightly better for Clinton. The white Catholic vote was 53-44 for Romney, R plus 9. Now it's R plus 4 for Clinton. 50-46. Okay. So it's a move in Clinton's favor by 5 points, even though slightly white Catholics still vote for Trump. But Hispanic Catholics is a D61. Unaffiliated D44. So if you are unaffiliated with political religion, you're heavily Democratic. That's the same as what it was in 2012. It's just interesting that of all the voters in June 2012, again, this is a Pew poll that was out just recently. In June 2012, all voters, Obama led Romney by 4 points. And in June 2016, Clinton led Trump by 9 points. So the biggest gains for Trump are white Protestants. And it wasn't even white mainline Protestants, it was evanger But the biggest gain for Clinton were Catholics.
Okay. Thinking back to I don't know why anybody would bring something up at this point about the what was it? The post 2012 election. Did they call it an autopsy? I can't even remember.
Yeah. But that was GOP.
I mean, that was a big point in it. I mean, they almost immediately threw it out, but Hispanics, Catholics in particular.
Yeah, you know what I'm thinking?
I'm
thinking attacking the Pope probably wasn't a good move for Trump.
Yeah, right. Probably not. But, well, the different Pope makes a big difference here, too. I mean, that was you talk about, obviously, we hear the demographics and the statistics and the very clear split between white Catholics and non-white Catholics, and we saw the Catholic Church, for whatever reason, decide to, it was the Pope himself, ditch the white Catholic Pope and bring the non-white Catholic Pope in, and it didn't work out very well for Republican plans, but they had abandoned that plan anyway. The taco bowls haven't done it. Gee whiz. But there was a huge program ongoing for years about outreach to Catholics, and it worked for the white Catholics. That was really the point. But they were hoping that they would bring along non-white Catholics in the Republican Party with their anti-abortion stances, and doesn't seem to have worked for the non-white Catholics very well. Even though many of them do remain pretty staunchly anti-choice, they just don't base their voting on it.
Right. Anyway, that's a summary for today. A little bit of policy for a change, a little bit of politics. And thanks so much for listening. This is Greg Dworkin speaking with my friend David Waldman, Kagro in the morning. He'll take you for the next hour, 10 some odd minutes, and we'll see where the show goes. We never really know until we get to the end. And we'll be back tomorrow. We'll do it again.
Okay, because that's Friday.
Yeah, it is Friday.
All right,
here,
so
right?
no meetings?
Not
yet.
Not tomorrow.
Ah, okay.
Not that I know of, although I'll contact you if... Oh, yeah, I forgot that.
On vacation.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
alrighty, talk to you.
Thank you. Thank you for talking to me now. I appreciate it. Thanks, Greg. Have a great day. Go to St. Louis if you can do it. If you're already there, stay where you are because you're probably... I don't need to tell you that. Honestly, if you're in St. Louis, right now you're either at breakfast or still asleep. Or perhaps, I guess, well, no, it's 8:47 there. No panels starting yet, but you might be making your way to the lobby for coffee and listening to, oh, you know what? Things did start, right? I'm not there, so I'm out of tune with all of this stuff that's going on. But if I am correct, isn't the morning news stuff that you might be listening to? Oh, my God. I just realized instead of what's going on here. That's crazy. But if you have to, my God. Could you do better than the morning dump, as they love to call it, when they take the stage there to discuss the morning's news at Netroots Nation? Liz Winstead, the famed Liz Winstead. I even see a picture has been tweeted saying they were about to begin that 25 minutes ago, so maybe you're in the audience there. Who else is in this picture? Is that Goldie Taylor? I can't tell for sure. All I know is of her is her avatar picture. And if it don't say your name and it's not your avatar picture, then I don't know what the hell's going on. And in the background, I'm at a loss here. So maybe we'll follow along, or maybe those of you who are in the audience can tell me later on. Anyway, you could do worse, I'm saying, and especially if you're on site there. Also, Elon James White and his The Week in Blackness crew, I believe, if I read correctly, and I only see these things in passing, doing one of the evening keynote sessions with a live program. So, geez, this was the year to be there, and I'm not. So, how's it going, everybody? Yes, by the way, in terms of proper credit for photography, it was, in fact, the picture that I saw of Bill tweeted around with a link, I think, to, I don't know, one of the outside picture hosting. It was Christina, and we're going to have to try again with the last name. I think I've probably said it on the air before, but a big fan of the show, supporter of the show, Christina, I'm guessing Nowacki, unless it's Novaki with the W pronounced as a V, one of those Central European things. I don't know. Could it possibly? No, I guess if it had a CJ and it would say Nowachi. But Nowaki is what it looks like to me, and I like to think of her as No Wacky. Like, no, Christina's no wacky nut. She knows what she's talking about. Anyway, she took a picture of Bill yesterday. I believe was it a selfie? It must have been a selfie. It's that close-in shot of the two of them. Bill with his lanyard already on, although I think he may wear that 24/7. regardless of whether the show's on or not. What's the hat? I see island. What island? Block Island? I don't know. I can't tell what's on. You tell me, Bill, but he's probably listening to Liz Winstead's show right now. You get a pass for it this week, and really anytime you want, because we're on podcast, and you can find us anywhere at any time. And have I mentioned to you this week? I know I have. We're on YouTube. I am not sure what that's going to do. I'm experimenting with the numbers and what does it do to our Libsyn download numbers if we also make the show available on YouTube. But not only just that, making it available, but moving it over to the front page and for our morning posts, instead of embedding the Libsyn player, I've been embedding the YouTube player. I don't know if it makes any significant difference, but it's weird. I've had to make this decision. I live in, I was going to say live and die, but I really don't. I like to look at the Libsyn numbers because that's the most solid count we've got of at least who's downloading the podcast, even though there are several other places you can download it and it doesn't, I don't think, count in their statistics. But, they make a nice chart there and it shows how many people are listening and how you're doing over time. And it's been nice to see the numbers at Libsyn grow, but it's not worth anything in particular. So, I don't know. For a while there, occasionally we were able to bring in sponsors based on the numbers at Libsyn, but then that's not been particularly consistent. And so really my kids tell me this, and kids know. My kids wanted me on YouTube, and then Libsyn made it possible to make it very easy to put your podcast on YouTube. My kids wanted me on YouTube because they're convinced that's the future. I mean, my youngest son says, when I grow up, I want to be a YouTuber. There's a long-term demographic story in that. And he's talking about, what's weird is I can't believe that this exists in the world. But again, another story about how many people there are in the world. People who make a living videotaping, essentially, themselves playing video games and then putting that on YouTube. They comment along the way. And people love it. Kids love it. And they watch it enough times that these YouTubers make a living off of ad revenue. When people are watching your videos thousands of times, or thousands of people watching it once or twice, your numbers get up there and people start paying to place ads, the annoying 30-second ad that they put at the beginning of the video before you play it. And I don't know, a penny or whatever ends up in the pocket of the person who owns the video, and if it's watched enough times, it's actually serious money. And so in that sense, it would be much better to boost the numbers on YouTube. If we had the thousands of people downloading it off of YouTube, I guess it would be good. But then I would miss seeing it at Libsyn. But there's no money attached to Libsyn. So I don't know if there'll be any money attached to the YouTube one either. I don't think we really do that kind of trade. But one of these days, I'll actually coordinate and talk with the folks at Daily Kos HQ, World HQ, and we'll actually begin to make use of this YouTube thing. Maybe we'll add some video, maybe not, but in the meantime, we could at least have them. We could put the videos, we might as well just put the YouTube videos on the Facebook page at the very least for Daily Kos proper and see what that does to the traffic. Anyway, that's not even interesting news here. So we'll jump off of that topic. Let's see. What other fun things have I put aside for consideration? We'll go to back to Pocket, and I guess we'll finish up with the mention that I made from NBC News, thanks to Sponson, that Cleveland police had said, we revere guns so you can carry them. But knives are for thugs, I guess. You got to be a true killer to really be stabbing people to death left and right, especially in mass numbers. So knives are a no-no. But guns, inherently good, they're really restricted. But it does say a little something weird that that's been the interpretation of the Second Amendment, that the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, and that arms means firearms to the firearm lobby. No surprise there, right? The firearm lobby by that now I mean the firearm manufacturers lobby, is the NRA, but there are, of course, gun owner lobbies as well. That used to be what NRA fancied itself to be, now no longer true. But interesting that all of the money that got poured into it, I mean, I guess there's just no money or power in the National Knife Association, and they're coming up short. But an interesting illustration of kind of how the system in general works, right? The national, the gun owners' lobbies have put the money into it, and now essentially, Second Amendment gets read as special exception for one particular kind of very lucrative money-making arms. And, well, you know, they're making money because they're the most popular kinds, because they're easy to use and they can kill people at a distance, and you don't really have to know very much in order to kill people. You can even kill yourself, totally accidentally. That's how effective these arms are. I was asked the other day if I knew offhand, and I don't, I think it was Josh Warren who asked this one, does the Second Amendment or any other provision have anything to say about carrying a sword openly? I bet you can't do that. And I think you really can't. Clearly not in Cleveland anyway. Although it's not a knife, I guess you could try and argue. But hey, if Hamilton can, you know, in Hamilton's day they could carry swords, and so that clearly would have been within the contemplation of bearing arms. But no, because there's no money in swords, I guess, is probably what's really at the heart of things. Okay, back over to Pocket, because all the good stuff got stowed there. I think, though, you know, Twitter could bring me something new and exciting any time. Let's see. More gun stuff. Why not? First of all, I just wanted to make mention of this one. Gun fail happens to have a major influence on gun violence journalism and reportage. And it continues to be the case, continues to go on unacknowledged, despite that being the case. The one acknowledgement, let's see, the few acknowledgments we've gotten on this, there would be, well, Scott Charles, certainly, although he's not a journalist, has been quite open and very generous in reminding me and others that his very successful free gun lock program in Philadelphia, which has garnered some tremendous notice in the last couple of days, is inspired by the gun fail stories and Twitter feed. It's better than the gun fail stories and Twitter feed because it's actually doing something in the world. But I'm glad that he sort of was able to extract inspiration from it. As it turns out, not only has his own program been extraordinarily successful, but he tells me that the local pols, the city council, etc., have taken notice of this thing, and they're all interested. There's bureaucracy involved whenever one of those guys gets involved. But essentially, they've all been extraordinarily supportive of it, want to see more of it done, and each of the supportive members of the city council are now interested in, how can I get in on this? How can I help distribute gun locks? How should I put money in? Should I be distributing them myself? And that's not a bad way either. I mean, pictures could be generated, photo ops of you handing out the gun locks. It's a great way to leverage the symbiotic nature of these things. So if you've got sympathetic politicians, as it happens, there's a lot of sympathetic Democratic politicians due in Philadelphia over the next couple of weeks, and I hope they will take notice of these things and lend their support to Scott Charles's program there. Also, I guess we have gotten notice from Peter Manso, whose book of melancholy accidents is out, and that too, at least partly inspired by gun fail. He was already doing research that had tipped him off to the existence of this strange genre going all the way back to pre-revolutionary days, colonial days in the United States, and then seeing that there was a modern linkage, decided to tie the two together and put together a really interesting book on that score. All right, like I said, it continues, though, to influence daily journalism. 538 in on the act now. Maggie Koerth Baker, Koerth, Koerth, Baker, with what looks to be a 3-part series, though I've only seen part 2 of the 3-part series, but it certainly hints at the fact that it's a 3-part series on gun deaths. This second one focusing on accidental gun deaths. Anybody know anybody who's focusing on accidental gun deaths? Anyway, extensive piece here about their own work on it, making no mention of mine. So, hey, it's not like you can't come to it independently. True. And it can definitely happen. No doubt about it. And I still would say that gun fail has a tremendous influence on it because gun fail stories get passed around. It's pervasive. They're up all the time. There's no stop to it. So there's no way you could be involved in liberal-leaning political Twitter and not have seen it. And they may not, make the connection and say, oh, they're all coming from this one guy, and that's excusable. But whatever. In journalism, in all aspects of the world, nothing different under the sun, nothing new under the sun here. Hey, I had a fabulous idea, and no one but me deserves any credit for it. And besides which, they've got a point to make here, and we can't go around salving the feelings of people who've also done work on these things. Work needs to be done. Anyway, so interesting piece here Maggie has. What counts as an accident? And it's a great question and highlights an interesting problem in trying to get a definitive answer, and discusses the need to get a definitive answer. If you want to base policy on accidents and the accident rate and looking to cut that down, as liberals, we're going to want fact-based, reality-based policy. Can you get it if it's this difficult to figure out who are the accidents and how many of them are there? I'll just give you a small taste of what's going on here. When it comes to gun deaths, medical examiners and public health scientists don't agree on what accidental really means. Neither does my own Twitter feed, of course. They love to point out, of course, that there either are no such things as accidents, or that at the very least the main bulk of what I end up tweeting out aren't or ought not to be considered as accidents, but rather negligence. So there's that issue as well. But this really runs pretty deep, this piece, giving you lots of examples of things that have been classified, at least by some, as accidental shootings, and then asking you, look, do you really think this was an accident? And there's a couple of sort of interactive bits in here in which you're given a fact pattern, and you're asked, is this death a homicide, a suicide, an accident, natural, undetermined, other? Interesting approach to this stuff, and very detailed. And a bit of a long read, but I wanted to at least refer you to it and note that I think we're moving people into this genre. And it does note at the end of the article that this is a part of that means 538's project exploring the more than 33,000 annual gun deaths in America and what it would take to bring that number down. They also have a podcast, which is also a great idea. A podcast called What's the Point, which that sounds like a bit of a downer, which is highlighting the project on gun deaths all week. So good job. Well done. And I don't know what else to say. Sure, there's a lot of people suddenly working on accidental gun deaths and accidental shootings that appear not to know why they're doing it and having no interest in involving me in it. But at least I have the radio. All right. So let's see. What else did I put aside in pocket? I told you that there was some historical aspect to the gun story that I wanted to share with you. And that's true, but I'm not quite ready to get there yet. You know what? Let me take a short detour. Where is the... Did I not put aside one of the stories? It doesn't really matter because you got the gist of it, that there was the rumor that the secret improperly revealed by the former campaign aide that Donald Trump is now suing was that it had to do with an affair as between Corey Lewandowski, former campaign manager, and Hope Hicks, the campaign spokeswoman. How does she do it all by herself? Everyone wanted to know That was the question on everyone's lips. And now I guess we find out she has not been doing it all by herself all along. After all, she's been doing it with Corey Lewandowski. I think I'm safe from suit on all of that. We don't know what it is, and no one ever will if Donald Trump has his way. I just wanted to bring that up one more time because haha, and also ew, gross, but also by way of segueing into the world of the seamy underworld of Republicanism in general, really. I can just leave it at that. The Republican Party. Armstrong Williams now has a problem of his own, named in a sexual harassment suit. Eric Wemple of the Washington Post has this story, and it involves, of course, Williams, who was a central figure, if there is such a thing, in the failed presidential campaign of Ben Carson, who totally would not have liked that whole sexual harassment thing. Anyway, Armstrong Williams stands accused of sexual harassment and retaliation from a former sales associate at a local Joseph A. Bank store. That's the basics of the start of this thing. I skimmed over this article last night. Charlton Woodyard is the name of the person lodging the complaints, filing in D.C. federal court, seeking unspecified damages from Williams for seeking to control Mr. Woodyard financially, professionally, and emotionally, and sexually, too. The end result of this effort, notes the suit, was that Williams abused his power to attempt to exploit Woodyard sexually. So, long story short, he found this guy at Joseph A. Bank. Why? I don't know. What was Armstrong Williams doing in, they make a point of saying in here that the Joseph A. Bank is not the highest end store when it comes to business wear. But I guess, I don't know, Armstrong Williams was either a fan of the suits or the help. Anyway, he struck up a conversation / relationship with this guy and brought him over to help on his Sirius XM radio station and yada yada. And I don't know. Anyway, one thing led to another, and he ended up in the steam room with the dude quite a bit, among other things. Just pointing out that people are weird and Republicans are people, and they're as strange as the rest of us, no matter what they tell you about their heartland values. Another story I noted but didn't put aside, but let's just take a quick look, because it's also same sort of thing. A Republican dude in Tennessee, a legislator. I'll have to scroll back and take a look at my own tweets there to find. I retweeted it, but I didn't think it was going to rise to the level of taking notice. But now we got a story to weave here. Might as well add this one to the pile. It was a Tennessee Republican legislator who somehow got himself in a hell of a situation. Here we go. Sponson took notice of this one too, and tweeted this story as well. Once I first laid eyes on it here. Jeremy Durham is the name of the guy in question, the legislator in question, had sexual, quote, interactions with 22 women, the report says. And it's not just because they wanted to report on him, having interactions with 22 women. It's that he was doing it while in public office and at the Capitol is really the issue. Representative Jeremy Durham, again, a Republican, engaged in inappropriate sexual conduct with 22 women, not all at once, but that would have been something, including sexual harassment, and his actions warrant expulsion from the Tennessee General Assembly, according to newly released report from the state attorney general. But as it turns out, his fellow Republicans recommend really not doing anything at all. A special legislative committee is leaving it up to the voters of the 65th District to decide whether Durham, a Franklin Republican, will continue serving in the legislature. Durham, once considered a rising star in the party, who's rising all right, is up for re-election this year. So leave it to the people, because why should legislators, particularly Republicans like us, pass judgment on someone for their private behavior? All of a sudden, they've discovered the dividing line. That conduct by Durham, who is 32 and has been married since 2011, includes bringing a 20-year-old college student / political worker. That's That's some description. To his legislative office. Legislative. With a cooler full of beer, I don't know for a 20-year-old generally, kissing her, and eventually having sex with her on the couch, according to the report. It's pretty amazing. He told her, though. He told her that he wanted to kiss her, so full disclosure. That's good. I want to kiss you. Just full disclosure. And the two kissed, and by the way, had sexual intercourse, the report states. But we'll just stick with the kissing is the important part. Anyway, they say these legislators don't have a foreplay game. You got it all wrong. Cooler full of beer and kissing on the couch, the legislative couch. You go, Tennessee. Durham also sent a late-night text message to the same woman. Oops, I skipped the part here. Afterward, this is the important stuff. After the sex on the couch, I guess, they talked and watched a baseball game in his office. He is a ladies' man. During which time Durham told her, I better be careful or I could end up falling for you. Wow, he is a sweet talker. I might like you, lady I just had sex with on the couch, but hey, how about that? How about them Mets? Durham also sent a late-night text message to the same woman identified as Jane Doe 38. That's not her screen name. That's the 38th woman he's involved with that they didn't dare hang a real name on. Saying, I would like to see you naked around midnight. This is a charmer. The report says, I'm going to try this. The woman told the Attorney General, I was going to go further with that. I decided not to. That she went to Durham's office about midnight and he was intoxicated. The two had sexual contact, the report states. On a third encounter, the third kind, they had sex in Durham's home. This is getting less exciting. I think the legislative office couch thing is probably better. Although, some of those couches. Well, anyway, don't sit on them. Jeez. The report also includes another woman identified as Jane Doe 9. There are 38, at least, we know of, who said during the 2013 or 2014 legislative session, that Durham had a dish of candy on his desk. This is what got sponsored to tweet me. Had a dish of candy on his desk. When she asked for one, Durham instead pulled a dirty, where's this going? Unwrapped, oh my God, mint, a dirty unwrapped mint from his pocket and said, you don't want those, I've got this. I'm not even sure what that's supposed to mean. I mean, he pulled it out of his pants, so gotcha, but I mean, if you don't want those candies, I've got this terrible one, which isn't even what I would really like to pull out of my pants. I don't know, I don't know what I don't even know what I'm like heading for here. Although I just got a note from J.W. Foster who said, please quit. Now, how am I supposed to note this on the I guess it doesn't not necessarily supposed to be on the air. But it says, please quit using, and there's asterisks here to block out the letters of what is very clearly goddamn. But I guess I'm supposed to stop using that. Well, it was a polite request. Maybe I will. It's the sort of thing that tends to fall out unconsciously. Anyway, the real point of bringing this goddamn story up, I did it already, was to get to this. You don't want one of those, I've got this. After that, she gave Durham the nickname, you ready for it? Pants Candy, which, quite honestly, I would like you all to start calling me that right now. A male lobbyist, according to the report, said when the woman asked for a mint from the candy dish, Durham put his hand in his pocket and moved it around in a manner that made quite a display of accentuating his genitalia. God, I love court filings. Man, they're hot. So there you go. Pants Candy. You can just call me that. I think really the goddamn thing is probably our last goddamn problem, considering what I'm reading about. Anyway, I'll do my best. I think I can restrain myself for the most part. I apologize to those of you who may be damned, and that for you that's a trigger. So okay, back to our main story: the carrying of instant death machines that will kill us all. Guns. just to switch gears again. I have a couple of stories, then some historical notes, I think, to add to all this. Modern day, day-by-day news bits. Do you remember Jamie Gilt? Is that the name? The woman, the Florida woman who was, that's right, accidentally shot by her 4-year-old on her way to look at a horse, as it turns out. But she was the gun enthusiast / online gun rights advocate. Had a Facebook page about guns and how awesome they were. And she left her .45 loose on the floor in the car, and the child unbuckled his seatbelt to go get himself out of his chair and pick up a toy that he had dropped, and then picked up a .45 instead and shot her in the back. Well, she's talking to the NRA training group in Winter Haven. So now, I guess, when when you're caught driving drunk and you have an accident and you're badly injured, one of the things you do to stay out of jail for it is to agree to go around to high schools and colleges and say, don't drink and drive, you'll end up like me. Well, I guess when your 4-year-old accidentally shoots you in the back with your .45 because you're such a safety advocate, you end up going around to NRA gun safety meetings and talk about, don't do what I did, because you won't be awesome anymore. Jamie Gilt was speaking to the Engage, like 12 gauge, Engage, get it, Engage, of Polk County. They were meeting in Winter Haven on Tuesday. She was accidentally shot, as you know, by her 4-year-old son, and spoke about the incident and gun safety. She doesn't reveal too much more here, except I thought an interesting note was that she had decided that day to bring her .45 with her, and she usually wears the gun in a holster on her hip, but that day she decided to put it under the driver's seat, which all by itself is just one more reminder of, well, I'm always safe, and I always pay attention because I'm a responsible gun owner, and I always this, always that, always follow the rules, except when I don't. And sometimes I don't because, I'm too awesome to worry about what I do, really. But I tell other people, when people are critical of my gun handling or my gun ownership in general, I like to say I always do the safe thing, but really I don't. I just, whatever, I wing it. Why didn't she put it on her hip that day? Well, it's because, she says, I was not going shopping or going to Walmart or anything like that. I was going to my mom's house, and I was going to my cousin's house. The worst thing I think I might have encountered that day would be a rattlesnake, Gilt said about why she didn't wear the gun on her like she usually does. So that's the measure. If I'm going to Walmart, oh my God, ISIS could be there. If I'm going to my mom's house, ISIS totally won't be there. My mom's not going to shoot me. I know that. Well, to be honest with you, the statistics say that you probably are running a higher risk going to see family when there are guns around than going to Walmart. That's just true. But also, I think it's interesting because I love the way they make those sorts of assumptions. Like you wear your gun to Walmart because you never know. You never know. And they had one of the best points that they make is, yeah, it's true. You do. You never know. I can credit that. You never know what's going to happen there. Of course, that also includes you never know. You might accidentally fire that gun, as somebody did just the other day at a Maynard's store in Illinois, I think. Danville, Illinois. Maynard's is a home improvement place. I don't know. It's not as big a chain as, say, Home Depot, but that's the sort of store it is. Guy, concealed carry permit holder, but apparently not a holster owner. Stuck a gun in his waistband, and when he went to adjust his shorts, as people, you should always adjust your shorts while shopping. Pants candy guy. And he accidentally, just fired his gun into the floor, and, lots of apologetic talk about, basically, well, it scared the gun owner more than anybody else. They just went on about their business. Well, damn right it scared the gun owner. You could have just killed somebody 'cause your shorts were pinching. 1, get better shorts. 2, get a holster. 3, think about maybe nothing's going to happen to you in Maynard's. But anyway, back to Jamie Gilt. I just thought it was interesting. You never know because Walmart. But at my mom's house, you know. You don't know. You never know there either. Somebody could come. Are we not all keeping guns under our bed because home invasion? How do you know there's not going to be a home invasion when you're there? Why aren't you wearing your gun? It's an inconsistency thing. Not that I really want them wearing their guns all the time. It's just, it's cherry picking and selective thinking, and I'm sure I'm guilty of it somewhere along the line as well. It happens to everybody unconsciously. I would just like to point it out. Either you wear the goddamn thing on your hip all the time just for safety and no other reason, or don't even bring up, it's not like I was going to Walmart. I have a guess. Going over to Jamie Gilt's mom's and cousin's house is probably, to me, would look an awful lot like going to Walmart, except there wouldn't be so many things for sale. Just guessing, because I'm an elitist. Anyway, moving on. I just think that's interesting. So she's retelling her story. She's doing so in front of the NRA's safety gang. I don't really know what that was about. Mostly it's just a puff piece about her and what was going through her mind when she was shot. And golly gee, shouldn't we always be safe with our guns? She says, kids are curious and they need to be trained from an early age. Train them not to handle it all or handle it in a way that they can't hurt themselves or someone else. Good idea. Total failure on your part with that idea. Not that you, and that's sort of not being pointed out in here either, right? Here she is saying, oh, you got to train him. Well, he was only 4 years old, so maybe she hadn't started training him yet. No, I remember when she was shot, we all looked at her Facebook page, and she was talking about how jacked her 4-year-old got when she took him shooting. So, obviously she was training him already. What was she training him in? Was she training him? Don't pick up a gun if you see it all by yourself. Kind of tell an adult. No, she was teaching him to get jacked to shoot the gun. So guess what? He shot the gun. You dummy. But that all gets left out of this because, she's recovering and everybody needs a chance to rehabilitate themselves. Dennis Flagg, president of Engage, said when he saw Gilt's story on the news, he knew he had to have her come speak to the group about gun safety because she didn't know anything about it. We wanted to show what she's learned from the shooting and have her share her story. Flagg said a gun should always be secured, especially if a child is present. Accidents can always happen, even though she just started her talk by saying, probably accidents won't happen, or other things won't happen. Anyway, I'm annoyed by the story, and that's really all there is to it. I just wanted to point out she's alive. She's able to walk around now. She's now on the road to becoming an NRA firearms instructor and will be certified at the end of this month. So that's what it takes. You, even if you have left your .45 on the ground and your 4-year-old just picked it up and shot you while you were driving, can, in a month or so, get yourself certified to be an NRA firearms instructor. So great, fantastic. You really are a valuable addition to the team, I'm sure. She plans, she says, to teach classes and show people that the unexpected can always happen, including when you're going to your mom's house. Jim Pruitt, a certified firearm instructor, not at all perturbed by this and not worried about the devaluation of his certification at all by the fact that high-profile gun failure Jamie Gilt is going to carry the same credentials he is, says he shares Gilt's story with his classes for the same reason. They need to know of the bad things that can happen, he said, which is a fine thing for them to be telling you. I agree. I try and tell you all the time. However, I'm the big jerk for telling you because I don't like guns as a hobby, but they do, so it's awesome and tactical when they tell you. And communist, liberal, dirty crap, why don't I go back to Russia stuff if I tell you? So what kind of lessons are they learning, by the way? I thought I would tell you about it. They need to know about the bad things that can happen. That's Jim Pruitt, the certified firearms instructor. Now, Pruitt said he originally thought there was negligence on Gilt's behalf. That's not on her behalf. It's really not. The negligence was anything but on her behalf. On her part, yes. But this is an issue I have with English teachers, not gun owners. Pruitt said he originally thought there was negligence on Gilt's part because of reports he read. But now he thinks it was really just a freak accident after hearing her side of the story. Bzzzt. Wrong. completely wrong conclusion to draw from this. She's now doing more harm than good by giving this talk, obviously. The gun instructor community thought she was being negligent. This is why I hate the negligence framing, and I'm never going to use it. I just want you all to know. Stop tweeting me about, it's a negligence, not an accident. No, I want to use accidents because it has a very stupid connotation, and this is a very stupid person, and she's talked to people who were stupid to begin with and made them dumber by sharing her story. Now I'm outraged, as you can probably tell. I don't know, and it probably argues in the opposite direction for those of you who prefer the negligence framing. No, you must stick with the negligence. This is exactly why I don't like it, to be honest. She'll tell her story in such a... because no one wants to be labeled negligent. That's true. That part, I think, when liberal anti-gun, or at least gun safety proponents say, no, we have to call it negligence, because that's what it is, and we want people to know that this stuff doesn't just happen. For one thing, it kind of sort of does just happen, but it happens around where people are careless, so why not call it negligence? And the answer is, I don't know. For some reason, to me, it seems that the negligence framing, I've said this before, gives gun enthusiasts an out. They'll just say, that was negligence, and I'm not negligent, so it won't happen to me. I will just simply excise negligence from my life. You can't do it, and the reason you can't do it is really actually kind of close to the accident type framing. Is it just stuff happens? Even if you're careful, stuff can happen. But the truth is that most of these people are not particularly careful. Anyway, you can see we've made a giant leap backwards here. The gun instructors went to the talk thinking, man, was she negligent? She left her gun on the floor. She talks about what she's learned from the episode, and the end result is the gun instructors now walk away and say, I thought she was negligent, but it just seems like an act of God. There's really not too much you can do about stuff. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it's not the negligence framing that's at fault here. Maybe I'm wrong about this stuff, but I'm definitely right about this. How can you come away from this and go in saying it was negligence and come away saying it was just a freak accident? After hearing her side of the story, I'm glad both her and her son are doing okay and that it wasn't negligence, he said. It couldn't be more obvious that the negligence framing is useless. I don't know that accident framing is any better, but framing things as negligence isn't penetrating the skulls of these people. Certainly not the way a .45 can. Originally, the Putnam County Sheriff's Office considered charging Gilt with second-degree misdemeanor, allowing a minor access to a firearm, but the state attorney's office in Sanford offered her a deal. They didn't think it was that bad either. She had to complete a gun safety course, which, guess what, she's now turning into an occupation, which good, entrepreneurial of you. She had to install a mounted holster in her vehicle. That's a good idea, and I think I should get into marketing those, plus ones for bathrooms. She had to provide proof of safe storage of her firearms in her home and give 10 speeches on the incident and what she learned from it. I need to talk. We got to get the state attorney's office in Sanford on the phone, I guess. You have to revise this. I mean, either that or you got to monitor the content of the speeches. She's got to give 10. She's going to give 9 more of these. 9 more rooms full of safety instructors are going to come out with the assumption that there's really nothing you can do. I mean, I don't think that was the intention of the state attorney's office, to have her convince safety instructors that there was no negligence involved in this and just an act of God. So she had to give 10 speeches. She's already finished her 10, so now there's nothing we can do. Gilt said Tuesday night she'd already completed her required 10 speeches, and then she was speaking at Engage because she wanted to. Great. I hope I can touch a few people enough to make them really think about it, and hope I can save one person from getting hurt or killed. Well, you screwed that up royally. The instructors are going to go home and tell everybody there was nothing you could do. I'm not looking for attention or anything, but I don't want to waste an opportunity to help someone if I can. Well, you might be able to, but not this way. You blew it. You can't. You're hurting people. Stop immediately. Oh, my God. All right. Whew. That was therapeutic, I guess. I don't know. Now I'm really mad about that. Other things that I can share with you about guns, because why not? Where do I start with this one? I mentioned this theme I wanted to bring up after Greg mentioned yesterday's Rolling Stone piece, or on yesterday's show, the Rolling Stone piece. Texas's gun culture and politics made Dallas shooting inevitable. And I mentioned to you that there were a couple of Atlantic pieces by the same author, as a matter of fact, that I thought made for good context in this. And there was one referred to in that Rolling Stone article, but I want to go to the other one, an earlier one first, called The Secret History of Guns. It's so secret. I might have to shoot you after we're done. But if I do, it'll just be a freak accident, so don't worry about it. Ugh. Secret History of Guns. This was Adam Winkler's piece here in the Atlantic. And I originally put this one aside in the context of the post-Dallas and the strange mix, open carry plus protest plus Black Lives Matter, and the increasingly obvious truth that open carry rights are for white people and white people only. That, I think he outlines it pretty well here. Secret History of Guns. The Ku Klux Klan, Ronald Reagan, and for most of its history, the NRA, all worked to control guns. Good job, Ku Klux Klan. The Founding Fathers, they required gun ownership and regulated it. And no group has more fiercely advocated the right to bear loaded weapons in public than the Black Panthers, the true pioneers of the modern pro-gun movement. In the battle over gun rights in America, both sides have distorted history and the law. Both sides. And there's no resolution in sight, except if the slow extermination of the gun rights group by getting shot by 4-year-olds. But she didn't die, so we're behind on that one. The 8th grade students, am I wishing for her death? No. But I wish she had actually learned a lesson and not undone the lessons other people thought they learned from her case. I didn't even get to that part of the story when I skimmed over it yesterday, or you would have heard it earlier. All right, so Adam Winkler's piece in the September 2011 issue of The Atlantic. The 8th grade students gathering on the west lawn of the state capitol in Sacramento were planning to lunch on fried chicken with California's new governor, Ronald Reagan. This wasn't in 2011, obviously. It's an old story. And then tour the granite building constructed a century earlier to resemble the nation's capital, but the festivities were interrupted by the arrival of 30 young black men and women carrying .357 Magnums, 12-gauge shotguns, and .45 caliber pistols, like Jamie Giltz. The 24 men and 6 women climbed the Capitol steps, and one man, Bobby Seale, began to read from a prepared statement. The American people in general, and the black people in particular, he announced, must, ready, take careful note of the racist California legislature aimed at keeping the black people disarmed and powerless. Black people have begged, prayed, petitioned, demonstrated, and everything else to get the racist power structure of America to right the wrongs which have historically been perpetuated against black people. The time has come for black people to arm themselves against this terror before it is too late. Seale then turned to the others. All right, brothers, come on. We're going inside. He sounded a lot cooler, probably, than I just did. He opened the door, and the radicals walked straight into the state's most important government building, loaded guns in hand. No metal detectors stood in their way. It was, after all, May 2nd, 1967, and the Black Panthers' invasion of the California State House launched the modern gun rights movement. The text of the Second Amendment is maddeningly ambiguous, as you all know. It merely says a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, not knives. Yet to each side in the gun debate, those words were absolutely clear. Or so they thought. Gun rights supporters believe the amendment guarantees an individual the right to bear arms and outlaws most gun control. Hardline gun rights advocates portray even modest gun laws as infringements on that right and oppose widely popular proposals, such as background checks for all gun purchasers, on the ground that any gun control measure, no matter how seemingly reasonable, puts us on the slippery slope toward total civilian disarmament. Ban slippery slopes, really. That's where the problem lies. This attitude was displayed on the side of the National Rifle Association's former headquarters, in all caps, of course, because it's being engraved in stone, and you don't use lowercase typically when that's the case. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, especially if it's a short quote. The first clause of the Second Amendment, the part about the well-regulated militia, was conveniently omitted. To the gun lobby, the Second Amendment is all rights and no regulation. Well, zealous advocacy. You're allowed. Although decades of electoral defeats have moderated the gun control movement's stated goals, advocates still deny that individual Americans have any constitutional right to own guns. The Second Amendment, in their view, protects only state militias. Too politically weak to force disarmament on the nation, gun control hardliners support any new law that has a chance to be enacted, however unlikely that law is to reduce gun violence. For them, the Second Amendment is all regulation and no rights. Maybe. While the two sides disagree on the meaning of the Second Amendment, they share a similar view of the right to bear arms. Both see such a right as fundamentally inconsistent with gun control and believe we must choose one or the other. Gun rights and gun control, however, have lived together since the birth of the country. Americans have always had the right to keep and bear arms as a matter of state constitutional law. Today, 43 of the 50 state constitutions clearly protect an individual's right to own guns apart from militia service. There's always that way of layering things in. That's legit. Yet, we've also always had gun control. The Founding Fathers instituted gun laws so intrusive, that were they running for office today, the NRA would not endorse them. Interesting. While they did not care to completely disarm the citizenry, the founding generation denied gun ownership to many people, not only slaves and free blacks, but law-abiding white men who refused to swear loyalty to the revolution. My word, that sounds dangerous. For those men who were allowed to own guns, the founders had their own version of the, quote, individual mandate that proved so controversial in President Obama's health care reform law, they required the purchase of guns. In 1792, a federal law mandated every eligible man to purchase a military-style gun and ammunition, of course that was a different thing back then, for his service in the citizen militia. In other words, they required service in the citizen militia. Really. Guns were, of course, just the tool. Nothing magical about them. They were just tools, right? Such men had to report for frequent musters, where their guns would be inspected and, yes, registered on the public rolls. Opposition to gun control was what drove the black militants to visit the California Capitol with loaded weapons in hand. The Black Panther Party had been formed 6 months earlier in Oakland by Huey Newton and Bobby Seale. Like many young African Americans, Newton and Seale were frustrated with the failed promise of the civil rights movement. Brown versus Board of Education, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and the Voting Rights Act of 1965 were legal landmarks, but they had yet to deliver equal opportunity. In Newton and Seale's view, the only tangible outcome of the civil rights movement had been more violence and oppression, much of it committed by the very entity meant to protect and serve the public, the police. Right? Hence, context for today. Inspired by the teachings of Malcolm X, Newton and Seale decided to fight back. Before he was assassinated in 1965 by guns, Malcolm X had preached against Martin Luther King Jr.'s brand of nonviolent resistance. Because the government was, quote, either unable or unwilling to protect the lives and property, unquote, of blacks, he said, they had to defend themselves by whatever means necessary. The famous part. Malcolm X illustrated the idea for Ebony magazine by posing for photographs in a suit and tie, peering out a window with an M1 carbine semi-automatic in hand. Malcolm X and the Panthers described their right to use guns in self-defense in constitutional terms. Article number 2 of the constitutional amendments, Malcolm X argued, provides you and me the right to own a rifle or a shotgun. Guns became central to the Panthers' identity as they taught their early recruits that the gun is the only thing that will free us, gain us our liberation. So say whites today, of course, as well. They bought some of their first guns with earnings from selling copies of Mao Zedong's Little Red Book to students at the University of California at Berkeley. How interesting. In time, the Panther arsenal included machine guns, an assortment of rifles, handguns, explosives, and grenade launchers, and boxes and boxes of ammunition, recalled Elaine Brown, one of the party's first female members, in her 1992 memoir. Some of this materiel, I guess I should say, came from the federal government. One member who claimed he had connections at Camp Pendleton in Southern California who would sell the Panthers anything for the right price. One Panther bragged that if they wanted, they could have bought an M48 tank and driven it right up the freeway. Should have done that. Along with providing classes on black nationalism and socialism, oh my God, Newton made sure recruits learned how to clean, handle, and shoot guns. How to clean, that's important. Their instructors were sympathetic black veterans recently home from Vietnam. For their righteous revolutionary struggle, the Panthers were trained as well as armed, however, indirectly by the U.S. government. That's right, recently home from Vietnam. So, militarily trained, see? Although now you can skip the military service part and just buy your training on the private market these days. Yay, capitalism. Boy, it's like Uber, but for military service. Civil rights activists, even those committed to nonviolent resistance, had long appreciated the value of guns for self-protection. Martin Luther King Jr. himself applied for a permit to carry a concealed firearm in 1956 after his house was bombed. His application, of course, was denied, but from then on, armed supporters guarded his home. One advisor, Glenn Smiley, described the King home as an arsenal. William Worthy, a black reporter who covered the civil rights movement, almost sat on a loaded gun in a living room armchair during a visit to King's parsonage. The Panthers, however, took it to an extreme. I guess we should say quote-unquote extreme, carrying their guns in public, displaying them for everyone, especially the police, to see. Newton had discovered during classes at San Francisco Law School that California law allowed people to carry guns in public so long as they were visible and not pointed at anyone in a threatening way. That's the interesting stage in between Wild West and modern gun rights things where, people thinking about it, maybe it does make more sense that people openly display that they're armed, because then one, that you're aware, and they know that you're aware, and they're not like secretly scheming to pull a gun and use the element of surprise in addition to the killing machine that they've got to get extra joy out of it. I don't know. I'm still torn about all of that. In February of 1967, Oakland police officers stopped a car carrying Newton, Seal, and several other Panthers with rifles and handguns. When one officer asked to see one of the guns, Newton refused. I don't have to give you anything but my identification, and they don't even agree to do that anymore. White guys don't anyway. Identification, name, and address, he insisted. This, too, he had learned in law school. And the answer isn't, wow, you really know what you're talking about. We need to proceed with caution, but rather, who in the hell do you think you are? An officer responded. Who in the hell do you think you are? Newton replied indignantly. He told the officer that he and his friends had a legal right to have their firearms. Newton got out of the car still holding his rifle. Probably not going to be able to get away with that one anymore. Amazing that we've taken steps backward in that one. Despite the fact that gun rights have moved so far forward, can you imagine actually exercising it to that degree and getting away with it? It's weird. So gun rights for white people have advanced considerably, whereas gun rights for the black people who actually were making an effort to break through and renew an interest in gun rights for individuals have lost ground. That's terrible. What are you going to do with that gun? Asked one of the stunned policemen. What are you going to do with your gun? Newton replied. By this time, the scene had drawn a crowd of onlookers. An officer told bystanders to move on, but Newton shouted at them to stay. California law, he yelled, gave civilians the right to observe a police officer making an arrest so long as they didn't interfere. We've lost ground on that one, too. Now you can't film it in some places, or at least so they claim. Newton played it up for the crowd. In a loud voice, he told the police officers, if you try to shoot at me, or if you try to take this gun, I'm going to shoot back at you, swine. That's also, well, okay, it was the times, right? Although normally a black man with Newton's attitude would quickly find himself handcuffed, if he's lucky, in the back of a police car, enough people had gathered on the street to discourage the officers from doing anything rash. Because they hadn't committed any crime, the Panthers were allowed to go on their way. Shoo! The people who witnessed it, the scene were dumbstruck. Not even Bobby Seale could believe it. Right then he said he knew that Newton was the baddest, well, MFer, as it says here, in the world. Newton's message was clear. This gun is where it's at and about and in. After the February incident, the Panthers began a regular practice of policing the police, which the open carry Tarrant County people like to do too. Thanks to an army of new recruits inspired to join up when they heard about Newton's bravado, groups of armed Panthers would drive around following police cars. When the police stopped a black person, the Panthers would stand off to the side and shout out legal advice. Interesting. Don Mulford, a conservative Republican state assemblyman from Alameda County, which includes Oakland, was determined to end the Panthers' police patrols. To disarm the Panthers, he proposed a law that would prohibit the carrying of a loaded weapon in any California city. City. Urban. Negro. When Newton found out about this, he told Seal, "You know what we're going to do? We're going to the Capitol." Seal was incredulous. The Capitol? Newton explained, Mulford's there, and they're trying to pass a law against our guns, and we're going to the Capitol steps. Newton's plan was to take a select group of Panthers loaded down to the gills to send a message to California lawmakers about the group's opposition to any new gun control. The Panthers' methods provoked an immediate backlash. The day of their statehouse protest, lawmakers said the incident would speed enactment of Mulford's gun control proposal. Good, try it again. Mulford himself pledged to make his bill even tougher, and he added a provision barring anyone but law enforcement from bringing a loaded firearm into the state capitol. Republicans, just this by way of, you know the history, but it's amazing to hear it recounted this way with the labels as they are. Republicans, Black Panthers, who's doing what and all this. Amazing. Republicans in California eagerly supported increased gun control. Governor Reagan told reporters that afternoon he saw no reason why on the street today a citizen should be carrying loaded weapons. He called guns a, quote, ridiculous way to solve problems that have to be solved among people of goodwill, unquote. Of course, today the line is, the presence of guns increases goodwill among people. In a later press conference, Reagan said he didn't, quote, know of any sportsman who leaves his home with a gun to go out into the field to hunt or to target shooting who carries that gun loaded. The Mulford Act, he said, would work no hardship on the honest white citizen. The fear inspired by black people with guns also led the United States Congress to consider new gun restrictions after the summer of 1967 brought what the historian Harvard Sitkoff called the most intense and destructive wave of racial violence the nation had ever witnessed. Devastating riots, of course, engulfed Detroit and Newark. Police and National Guardsmen who tried to help restore order were greeted with sniper fire. A 1968 federal report blamed the unrest at least partly on the easy availability of guns. Because rioters used guns to keep law enforcement at bay, the report's authors asserted that a recent spike in firearms sales and permit applications, are we seeing that right now? Cough, cough. Was directly related to the actuality and prospect of civil disorders. They drew the firm conclusion that effective firearms controls are an essential contribution to domestic peace and tranquility. Political will in Congress reached the critical point around this time. In April of 1968, James Earl Ray, a virulent racist, like the one running for president now, used a Remington Game Master deer rifle to kill Martin Luther King Jr. in Memphis, Tennessee. King's assassination and the sniper fire faced by police trying to quell the resulting riots gave gun control advocates a vivid argument. 2 months later, a man wielding a .22 caliber Ivor Johnson cadet revolver shot Robert F. Kennedy in Los Angeles. No mention of his religion. Interestingly enough, but hey, it's the Atlantic. The very next day, Congress, you wouldn't be able to get away with not mentioning it now. Very next day, Congress passed the Omnibus Crime Control and Safe Streets Act of 1968, the first federal gun control law in 30 years. Months later, the Gun Control Act of 1968 amended and enlarged it. Incrementalism. Together, these laws greatly expanded the federal licensing system for gun dealers and clarified which people, including anyone previously convicted of a felony, the mentally ill, illegal drug users, and minors, and we have to think about the illegal drug user part now, and minors. And they're having trouble, by the way, passing legislation federally restricting minors from ownership or operation of automatic weapons. Did you know that one? This broke in the news the other day. The children of the gun instructor out west who was accidentally killed by the 9-year-old he was instructing and teaching to use an Uzi for fun at one of those ranges where for fun you can fire a fully automatic machine gun. A big gun rights advocate, obviously, a gun instructor and an automatic weapons instructor at that. His family now says, there could probably be some stronger laws about that. Maybe we should say kids minors shouldn't be allowed to handle and operate automatic weapons. Not clear whether they're making any headway in lobbying on that. Anyway, more controversially, the laws restricted importation of Saturday night specials, the small, cheap, poor quality handguns so named by Detroit police for their association with urban crime, which spiked on weekends. Because these inexpensive pistols were popular in minority communities, one critic said the new federal gun legislation was passed not to control guns, but to control blacks. Indisputably, for much of American history, gun control measures, like many other laws, were used to oppress African Americans. Now we go into real history. The South had long prohibited blacks, both slave and free, from owning guns. Because you can't tell, right? That's interesting. That's the both free and slave. Well, I can't tell by looking at him whether that's a free black guy or a slave black guy. The point is he's got a gun, and that scares me, so let's just make it so black guys can't have guns, even if they're free. I can't tell whether that's a gun-wielding patriot who's out to make the world safer by guarding us all against ISIS, or he's a complete maniac who's going to gun us all down in the street. We're just going to have to wait and see. If you're white, for blacks, why wait? In the North, however, and I don't think we were really all that much better at the time, at the end of the Civil War, the Union Army allowed soldiers of color to take home their rifles, which is an interesting thing to allow people to do with Army property in general. Even blacks who hadn't served could buy guns in the North, so I guess we were better on guns, but I don't know whether that's a good idea or not, amid the glut of firearms produced for the war. So selling them off was a chief interest. It was, okay, they needed to make their money back. President Lincoln had promised a new birth of freedom, but many blacks knew that white Southerners were not going to go along easily with such a vision. As one freedman in Louisiana recalled, I would say to every colored soldier, bring your gun home. Good idea. After losing the Civil War, and I'll say it again, losing the Civil War, Southern states quickly adopted the Black Codes, laws designed to reestablish white supremacy by dictating what the freedmen could and couldn't do. One common provision barred blacks from possessing firearms. To enforce the gun ban, white men riding in posses began terrorizing black communities just to see if they had any guns. In January 1866, Harper's Weekly reported that in Mississippi, such groups had seized every gun and pistol found in the hands of the so-called freedmen in parts of the state. The most infamous of these disarmament posses, of course, was the Ku Klux Klan. Hitler, something. Anyway, in response to the Black Codes and the mounting atrocities against blacks in the former Confederacy, the North sought to reaffirm the freedmen's constitutional rights, including their right to possess guns. General Daniel E. Sickles, the commanding Union officer enforcing the Reconstruction in South Carolina, ordered in January 1866 that the constitutional rights of all loyal and well-disposed inhabitants to bear arms will not be infringed. When South Carolinians ignored Sickles' order and others like it, Congress passed the Freedmen's Bureau Act of July 1866, which assured ex-slaves the full and equal benefit of all laws and proceedings concerning personal liberty, including the constitutional right to bear arms. Interesting that even after completely losing the goddamn war, I did it again, still just basically defying congressional orders. All right, whatever. You're good citizens, I'm sure. That same year, Congress passed the nation's first Civil Rights Act, which defined the freedmen as United States citizens and made it a federal offense to deprive them of their rights on the basis of race. Senator James Nye, a supporter of both laws, told his colleagues that the freedmen now had an equal right to protection and to keep and bear arms for self-defense. President Andrew Johnson vetoed both laws. Yowza. Congress overrode the vetoes and eventually made Johnson the first president to be impeached. This does throw wrenches in things, doesn't it? One prosecutor in the impeachment trial, Representative John Bingham of Ohio, our gun-failingest state in the North, thought that the only way to protect the freedmen's rights was to amend the Constitution. And he was right. Didn't help a whole lot right away, but he was right. Southern attempts to deny blacks equal rights, he said, were turning the Constitution, a sublime and beautiful scripture, into a horrid charter of wrong. Again, shoes, feet, switching, what have you. In December of 1865, Bingham had proposed what would become the 14th Amendment to the Constitution. Among its provisions was a guarantee that all citizens would be secure in their fundamental rights. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. The key phrase in Bingham's view was privileges or immunities of citizens. And those privileges or immunities, he said, were chiefly defined in the first 8 amendments to the Constitution, because 9 and 10 were garbage, throwaway, even then. But they've since had a resurgence by the people who still think that the Second Amendment has been misinterpreted all this time. Lo and behold, that they would do the same, hold the same views. Weird coincidence. Jacob Howard of Michigan, the principal sponsor of Bingham's amendment in the Senate, reminded his colleagues that these amendments guaranteed the freedom of speech and of the press, the right to be exempt from unreasonable searches and seizures, and the right to keep and bear arms. Whether or not the Founding Fathers thought the Second Amendment was primarily about state militias, the men behind the 14th Amendment, America's most sacred and significant civil rights law, clearly believed that the right of individuals to have guns for self-defense was an essential element of citizenship. As the Yale law professor Akil Reed Amar has observed, between 1775 and 1866, the poster boy of arms morphed from the Concord Minuteman to the Carolina Freedman. The 14th Amendment illustrates a common dynamic in America's gun culture. Extremism stirs a strong reaction. The aggressive Southern effort to disarm the freedmen prompted a constitutional amendment to better protect their rights. 100 years later, the Black Panthers' brazen insistence on the right to bear arms led whites, including conservative Republicans, to support new gun control. Then the pendulum swung back. The gun control laws of the late 1960s, designed to restrict the use of guns by urban black leftist radicals, fueled the rise of the present-day gun rights movement, one that, in an ironic reversal, is predominantly white, rural, and politically conservative. And obviously we're not going to be able to finish up the entire article. I refer you to it to take a look. I'll wrap up then by just saying this last paragraph. I guess today the NRA is the unquestioned leader in the fight against gun control, yet the organization didn't always oppose gun regulation. Founded in 1871 by George Wingate and William Church, the latter a former reporter for the newspaper known for hostility to gun rights, the New York Times, the group first set out to improve American soldiers' marksmanship. Wingate and Church had fought for the North in the Civil War and had been shocked by the poor shooting skills of city-bred Union soldiers. An interesting bit of background information there. I do recommend that you take a look at the rest of it. We'll continue to discuss some of it. Maybe we'll pare it down a little bit and then pair it up with another piece from The Atlantic, also I believe from Adam Winkler, that will add some additional context, plus wrap things up for the week in general. And tomorrow maybe we can give some time over to Senator Tim Scott's rather interesting speech on the House floor, once again proving that Republicans do in fact pay attention once in a while and can have empathy for the situation of the common folks on the street. If it has happened to them, that is to say, he's black. He's been stopped by the cops. He had some great stories to tell, and I would love to go over that in detail. What's happening after this program besides partying down at Netroots Nation? Well, right here on Netroots Radio, it'll be Justice himself manning the captain's chair on Netroots Radio, Fresh Breath Star. What? Okay. And Tom has the calm. That rhymes. That's very nice. As we begin coverage of, Netroots Nation 2016 from St. Louis as Roaring Girl, Wink, Arliss Bunny, Will McLeod, Katie Klabasic, Chris Reeves, Blue Gal, and Drift Glass man the desk on Radio Row for interviews, commentary, panel, live streams, and breaking news. Stop by and say hi. Say hi in a microphone. Be heard. Put your voice on Netroots Radio. Why not? Perfect chance.
From Daily Kos Radio on netrootsradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
I understand Arliss Bunny brought some food and wine to share. I don't know if she's got it out this morning, but do stop by at Radio Row. Find your way to it. I guess listen for all the chatter and walk towards it. You can get your own voice on there. Meet the people behind the voices, not me, but they'll probably tell you some confidential stories about me instead.